So one day, I made a move to capture a pawn of his and gave my battle an opening to take a valuable piece. He smiled and said, "You can tell a lot about a person by the way he plays chess. People who think small in life tend to devote a lot of energy to capturing pawns, the least valuable piece on the board. They think they're playing to win, but they're not. But people who think big tend to go straight for the king or queen, which wins you the game. The most important thing that Mo Battle taught me was that chess was a game of consequences. He said that, just as in life, there are consequences for every move you make in chess. Don't make a move without first weighing the potential consequences, he said, because if you don't, you will have no control over the outcome. I never looked at life like that. I seldom weigh the consequences of anything until after I'd done it. I'd do something crazy and then brace myself for the outcome, whatever it happened to be. I had no control over the outcome and no control over my life. When I thought about it, it was a hell of a stupid way to live. On the chessboard, I eventually saw that I could predict, and more importantly, control outcomes. I considered the consequences of moves before making them. That gave me a whole new way of looking at life. So that was really a quote by Nathan McCall. So we're equating the game of chess with life. Chess is a very important game for Africans. For African parents in particular, it is a vital link to improving our children's intellect and ability to think well independently. In our primary responsibility as parents and first teachers to develop young, strong African minds that have the analytical ability to envision and create a better world than the one they inherited. We must devise and implement effective strategies to this end. Teaching them the game of chess is one such effective strategy. Our children are special. Of this fact, there is no doubt. And without question, the game of chess helps them realize their potential. This exciting and challenging game makes their minds even more remarkable because it helps to improve their ability to think more independently and critically about whatever they encounter in the streets, schools, and homes of our community. It allows them to think about consequences. But chess does not do this all by itself. It simply improves the probabilities and possibilities of the conscious. But chess does not do this by itself. It is we parents as adults who must be the primary initiators of their independent thought. Even as a game, chess instills discipline and fosters systematic and analytical thinking. As for other thinking, sports, it requires and fosters the development of a healthy, competitive spirit. It facilitates the development of a better thinking, head skills, which often translate into more logical planning in their spheres of life. In a world of escalating violent physical confrontations, it teaches them to think with their heads before using their hands or other weapons. They must consider all of their opponent's possibilities before bringing their hand to the board to execute a move. And it has also been shown to contribute to developing a strong sense of delayed gratification as they learn to work through a long string of tasks until an exercise is completed. Furthermore, chess is like maths, which was the ancient Nubians and chemists' strongest suit, because the universe they deciphered for us is in maths. Chess is a game that requires constant calculation and recalculation of multiple numerical problems at the same time. The leap of thinking that occurs as in a child when he or she is required to simultaneously consider the present possibilities and moves of 32 uniquely moving pieces continuously traversing 64 square board. It's truly amazing to witness. Not surprisingly, it increases these skills in what I have called what I like to call a default fashion. Mathematical thinking skills improve without students even trying. They don't even realize they're learning. But even if none of these reasons were relevant, chess is still of utmost importance. It carries weight because it is an African creation. It carries weight because it is an African creation which evolved into a positive African tradition. Therefore, it is something we should unconditionally value, keeping and nurturing it from one generation to the next because it speaks to our spirit. We know that it is started in Northern Africa, in one of the countries of what is now called the Middle East. We know that it is time, that at one time the entire Mediterranean era was part of the African nation. Of course, the emphatic disbelievers in the African origin of anything of substance, the question which would be, if chess did come from India, Pakistan, Iraq, Iran, or another of these places long ago, which it did not, where did their civilization come from? Who was their mother? They were peopled and ruled by African people and culture. And culture, as we know, is a way of thinking. It is the framework out of which people turn their physical environment into meaningful things. And that sustains and enhances their lives. Therefore, regardless of whether it was created in the North, South, East, or West Africa, whether it was an offspring of an African migration or colonization, chess is a product of the African mind, of African thought. In any case, the story of how it started has to do with two sibling princes long in dispute over a piece of land. Instead of continuing to fight an unnecessarily divisive and drawn-out bloody war, they had their scholars design a challenging game where the winner would have the land. That game, of course, was chess. In relation to this essay, however, there is another history lesson we should learn. Chess was one of the many things that Europeans discovered in Africa and carried back to their homeland to claim it as theirs. When they were caught in the lie that they created it and to keep credit from the Africans, they falsified its origin as being among Middle Eastern Arabs. A few years ago, the Europeans made a mistake, a very big mistake. The mistake came in the form of a commercial for some investment group or computer company. In it, a chess grandmaster was playing a number of different individuals, each on a separate game, by going from table to table and making one move at a time. We are able to see him, a middle-aged European, and his opponents who are pretty much the same nondescript individuals. He would make a move at one game, and then move on to the next, making another move, and on and on. He was making his rounds at a fairly brisk pace. Then he suddenly stopped and returned to the table whose other players we could not see. He momentarily studied his opponent's last move before pulling up a chair to study the board further. Apparently he was stumped, or at least he had discovered that he would have to put more thought into this game than the others. Then comes a shock. The camera turns to the individual he's playing. It is a younger, teenage African male. Now, think about the message that this will send to the young old Africans. Think about how it will call the intellectual foundation of white supremacy into question for them, if even for a moment. Think about how Europeans in their intellectual insecurity will interpret this. Think about how this will make them feel. It must have been quite disturbing to their fragile arrogance. I don't believe that they really recognized their error until the commercial had aired at least a few times, because it took that long to yank it off the air. Unlike golf, which has proven very lucrative for golf equipment manufacturers, there is no concerted effort to bring African youth into any brain game where they will intellectually walk all over Europeans. There is no area of intellectual competition where Europeans are promoting African participation. They know what the result will be. And although very few people seem to have seen that commercial, apparently from the African youth I've spoken with who did see it, and it was a deeply motivated agent in their pursuit of learning or advancing their chess skills. Yet a critique of chess in the West must move beyond how they underhandedly regulate who plays the game to just how the game is played. As with everything else they touch, long ago they changed the game itself to suit their white supremacist imperatives. The game of chess has been transformed into a racist playing field. In their hands, it has come to mirror their pale arrogance. As played, it was truly become a white man's game. It naturally honors its colonizers. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that white always moves first. No chess game is played under the guardianship of the European mind ever starts without white moving first. And this speaks to their need to always have an unfair advantage, to have others bow down to their pathetic God-vine will. This ritual is racist and unethical. It forces all others who want to test their minds by claiming the game as their sport to acquiesce to pale, deranged egos. To have only one side always move first, when in other games, sides are chosen with a flip of a coin, a roll of a dice, or any other number of other ways, including whoever's turn it is, compromises our spirit of fair play. From the first move, every single move is vital to winning the game. So therefore, always having the first move automatically, consistently gives whoever has the white piece an advantage, because every move counts. Moreover, almost all two-move chess problems and all chess strategies are now based on the white making the winning move. I know of no computer game where black can be made to move first. It is not programmed. It's not a programmed possibility. And virtually every example in chess books that teach winning tactics and strategies show white as the winning side. With players of equal skill ability, unless the player moving the white pieces makes a mistake, he or she will always be the one move ahead of the player using a black piece. Because black never starts first. He must work harder than white to win a game. Very good points there. In the beginning, it made no difference which side moved first, because the quality of the players was more important than the colour of the pieces. Race was not an African issue. Different coloured pieces for the two sides was only important for telling one side from the other. We must bring that conceptualization of the game back into play, and to quickly counter the colourless arguments of Negroes who will still defend the white's right to move first. With what difference does it make? Okay. If it makes no difference, then what difference does it make if black moves first? The oppositional nature of black and white in European culture is obviously evident in the game of chess. We do not have to delve far into the white supremacist insanity of European culture to see that white remains all that is positive and black all that is negative. That chess firmly supports this obsession is also shown in what colour the pieces are called. Whether the pieces are actually black or white or not, they are still called black and white. At our home school and everywhere else I may teach, the children are taught to move black first, and they are taught why. This is not being racist, as if it were possible for an African to be that way anyway. It is a counterbalancing force. We will ourselves first. As the ancestors said, if a stick is bent too far in one direction, it must be bent further in the other in order for it to become straight again. Maybe one day we will exist in a world where Africans recognize and act on their power. A world where it truly makes no difference whether black or whites move first. Who moves first is determined by a flip of a coin, a roll of a dice, or whatever turn it is. But that is not today, and we are not living in a traditional Africa. We recognize this reality at our school where chess is the integral part of the curriculum. So our students are taught that they are the ones who will determine how the game will be played in our community in the future. They are made to understand that they must reject the European definition of reality, even in play, if they are to prepare themselves well for these critical decisions. It's a very good point, Imagine that white in chess. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. Imagine in chess that the white piece always goes first. So what message does that turn out to like a little young child? White always go first. All games, other games, there's always a roll of a dice. You take turns. You turn over a card to find out who goes first. But in chess, the white always goes first. Why is that? And you may think that it doesn't matter, but if you think about pool, the white ball, or even snooker, the white ball is the ball knocks all the other balls down off the table. So you have to think about the concept of the people, the symbolism behind the people who created these games. Okay, I'll continue. We recognize this reality at our schools, where chess is an integral part of our curriculum. So our students are taught that they are the ones who will determine how the game will be played in our community in the future. They are made to understand that they must reject the European definition of reality, even in play, if they are to prepare themselves well for those critical decisions. Our children's sanity must be protected from the Europeans' racial hostilities. The esteem they brought this world through the divine African womb has to be systematically cultivated and strengthened in this anti-African reality. We must protect their minds from the violence of this white world. With this in mind, there are a few things that chess teachers and students in our communities need to seriously consider. If we do not want this game to continue to contribute to our menticide, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, every social and personal contribution exacerbates our disadvantage, whether the lessons are war, the lessons of war are of a serious nature or of play. They all work against us. The first thing we should look at is the board. In Western style play, there is only one correct way to place it before the pieces are set up. Historically, throughout the West, left, if not evil, is the least considered odd, or at least favoured. Interestingly, the major way which we tell if the board is correct when we lay it down is by seeing if a dark square is on the bottom corner, is on our left-hand side. Because chess theory is based on white moving first and the board being placed this way. They racially reinforce each other in the projection of white over black. Otherwise, it would make no difference, since it is made up of a set of 8 by 8 squares. The game could start with the board turned any of the two ways, with either side taking the first move. A row of 8 squares is a row of 8 squares. Beyond that, other fixed arrangements on the board are meaningless for us. For example, when setting up the pieces on the board, the queen always goes on her colour. If it is the dark-coloured queen, she sits on a dark square. And if it is the light-coloured queen, she sits on a light square. However, automatically placing the queen on her colour is not racist thinking. It is simply a matter of having the queen and king consistently aligned, facing each other. In that, all the other pieces to the side of the queen and queen are symmetrically in order, from the bishop to the knight to the rook. As you move away from the king or queen, this removes confusion as to which of the two squares the queen and king sit on. They are only two pieces whose placement can be confused. The king and queen should face each other, and having the rule that the queen goes on her colour resolves that otherwise would be a needless dilemma. You could just as easily say that the king goes on the colour if you choose, on his colour if you choose, but for the sake of not making a mountain out of a molehill, we will defer to the queen, since she is the most powerful piece on the board. Another problem, though, is with the names of the pieces, for even the pieces have European names. Naming people, places, and things after yourself, especially those things which are not your creation, is the ultimate statement of colonization and domination. Like language, dress, diet, and purpose, a people's games are changed to fit their invaders. Cultural appropriation of a people's material and non-material culture, but other requires that people be made as much as possible to fit the violator's cultural personality. This applies whether we are talking about language, religion, sexual practices, or games. For this, it goes without saying that the pieces we see on the board today do not reflect the artistry, roles, or names of the ancestors who originated them. There were no rooks, knights, bishops, pawns, or even kings and queens as we go back in time. This is not to say that these roles and places did not exist in an African form, in the African reality. There were fortresses and kings and cities with great defensive walls surrounding them. There were warriors on horseback. There were advisors to the Ngui and other leaders. There were large armies of citizen soldiers who marched into battle on foot. There were civil military and co-leaders of war in times of war. However, it is to say that they neither looked like their European counterparts, nor were they known by the same titles. Politically speaking, even though the others stand out clearly, in contrast to the African counterparts, the pawn is the most striking because of the cultural mentality that will be needed to see warriors on the front line as pawns in a military game. No clear-thinking African will ever see another African as an expendable foot soldier, having little or no value beyond death and self-sacrifice for some glory-hungry imperialistic elite. So this is Brother Jegna. This is the Afrocentristic Bookman Show. Excuse me, let me just change my glasses. And we are reading a book called Menticide. And this chapter we are reading is called The Game. So it must be pointed out that there is no... Okay, excuse me, one moment. We also need to question our aping of European ways of rushing, of always having to increase the speed at which everything is done. Of all games, chess should not create stress, it should relieve it. We are trying to develop African minds, and therefore speed chess or playing by the clock should be avoided, except as a limited practice technique. Chess is a contemplative, calming, meditative game. As in the original game, it incites peace, not war. It is not to be rushed. Therefore, the use of clocks and time constraints are not recommended, unless it is otherwise impossible to end the game or someone must leave. It matters not how Europeans have designed their tournament-style play. They are not our model of thought and behaviour, which includes play. It must be pointed out that there is no scientifically proven relationship between speed chess and the development of a quicker thinking among players. Even more importantly, no human civilization has advocated or demonstrated a connection between faster thinking and thinking better, between quantity and quality of mind, or inner mind. That is not until now, with the rise of European intellectual supremacy over others' ways of thinking, where information is consciously and consistently confused with wisdom. Wisdom takes time. Information is usually instantaneous. Of course, that would lead to a debate over whether we are really dealing with a civilization here. Nonetheless, the drive to have to constantly take everything to a more dangerous and even faster level, because emotion is extremely defined and tension must be constantly built up and released to experience emotional content, is characteristic of a progressive European culture. It is not African. It is not something our children should be socialized into, especially not in every single solitary aspect of our lives. Another invaluable lesson chess progressively cultivates is resilience or a determination to win, especially when it appears that the odds are stacked against us. It is possible of equal importance as the patience it instills. In explaining the extremely important quality of resilience to African youth, I often ask our students when it is that they become better, and when they do, or when do they really get to test for themselves just how good they are. Whatever the activity, improvement comes when you are challenged by someone or something better than you. If you believe that you can win, assuming that you will lose will inevitably bring loss, then the effort is greater. When winning is their aim, people put forth a greater effort to succeed when they are behind than when they are ahead. In many ways, being a disadvantage is empowering. Struggle begets strength, and belief in self is a key in any desire to struggle. A very good point. The same principles apply to chess. Struggling to win from a disadvantaged position will not only produce a stronger game, but will also stimulate a greater determination to succeed against overwhelming odds in other aspects of the student's life. Chess can also be used as a tool to overcome other qualities instilled in the minds of the children of a dominated people, determined to independently empower themselves. We should not allow our children to resign at any point during a game. No matter how desperate or lost the situation appears, they must search to find a way to win, or at least come out of it in a better position. Quitting is unacceptable. To quit encourages failure, and every failure strengthens the subconscious resolve to give up over the slightest hint of difficulty and rationalize away a growing collection of otherwise avoidable defeats in life. So that's a good point he's making there. He's saying that if we allow, in chess, people just give up, not to play pieces over. He's saying if you kind of did that, maybe subconsciously, when you come across a hard situation, you may just think, let me just quit. So he's saying in chess, you should always keep on going. You may win, but even if you don't win, at least you should be in a better position than if you just quit in the first place. So for the same reason, the student using the computer chess games must not be allowed to use the take back move button. It is an equally effective weakening agent. Therefore, we must require that the game only come to an end through checkmate, stalemate, or some other legal ending. As on any battlefield, where the people and the way of life are at stake, young Africans must internalize the will to fight with all their might until they have won. They can be left with no other choice. So take time to consider what significance our game should hold in our and our children's lives. Every functional aspect of a people's tradition should be carried forward. Culture transforms those thoughts and material things which are defined and support its essence. It's a ceiling. Without this transference of power, the culture ceases to functionally exist, except in a form of stolen artifacts others have kept to remind themselves of their fabricated superiority, and or give them life and originality that they were unable to produce on their own. Chess is one of those African traditions which should not be kept from our children, or wasted, abused, or badly played by other people. Learn the game correctly and then pass it on. Okay, so he's saying that games of intellect and challenge are very important because it could be linked to life. And the battle on the chess game, he's saying, is the same way we have to think about battles on life. And before every move, you should think carefully rather than just rushing in headlong without thinking what you're doing, because every move, every action has a consequence. So I think it's a good analogy there with chess and with life. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is called Deliver the Word. So this is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. We are reading a book called Menticide by Walumu Bomani Baruti. So this chapter is called Deliver the Word. If misery is your best friend and it's gotten so that you can't pretend, your tears keep giving you away. But you're praying for a better day. Why should I go through these changes? But they don't dig the urgency. This is an emergency, so make it heard. Deliver every word. So that is the truth of war. War, what is it good for? Okay. So, and another quote here. My only weapon is my pen, and the frame of mind I'm in. The things I fashion every day, they all reflect in what I say. And that's from Sly and Family Stone. So, deliver the word, this chapter is. Gifts are often buried deep, hidden in the material and emotional demands of success and other preferences. With time and enough distraction, they may even move beyond remembrance to oblivion. They can become concentrated in synapses that no longer fire. Yet, even in the state of petrification, sometimes a changed psychology, an improved diet, a newly discovered incredible possibility for purpose can begin to resuscitate them. By now, we should know that when the student is ready, the master will appear. I discovered my gifts in a quiet meditations while creating independence. The call to be free to wage war whenever, wherever and however I wanted to, against those who seek to destroy us, swept me into a new understanding of the ancestors' capacity to protect, nourish and guide my mind. The call of the Akoben, the war horn, eventually opened my mind to the past. I have been kept safe from so many evil and trifling circumstances in order to fulfill a mission of which I had not the slightest inkling. Thankfully, I now know why. But many people would not know to call those incidents in my life that they would logically lead to my awakening as an African warrior, scholar. Miracles because they can only imagine supernatural events in European religious terms. They see miraculous transformations as coming from an external sources, not from within. But the most ancient Africans who began and built human civilization based on deeply studied models of the universe, thought and behavior tells us that we bring the miracle of awakening, whether we understand it for what it is when it comes out or not. We call on the Creator and our ancestors to guide us into reality. And what we receive is relative to our needs and relative to what we are capable of comprehending and acting on at that time. True miracles are not external. They operate at the level of self. Once meaningful objects are removed and critical lessons taught, the courage to pursue a path builds on itself, strengthening the will to be true to yourself, your people, your divinity. It grows infinitely. In searching for my African self, I learned to trust the spirit of my ancestors, to locate those things in my life that so engaged my mind that all else was momentarily lost. As a child, during my parental and self-imposed quiet times, solace found through doing certain things. As an adult, I again found those pleasures of childhood that easily took me into myself and opened them up into adult demands of re-Africanization. In such Sankofa fashion, I looked into myself, into my past, to find myself and define my future. I found myself involved in the woodwork, art, writing, planting, explaining, ordering, inner and outer space, chess, music, just listening, and fighting. As an adult warrior scholar, born again into gifts discovered in my childhood, I learned to make these talents work together to gain focus and secure a level of independence. Thankfully, children's minds are holistic. It is in the dichotomizing confusion of Western culture that makes us dismember and dismiss our skills and selves for others. We learn to divide and conquer ourselves for others. For me, writing is simply one expression of a collective ancestral gift. It is not simply one aspect of my African being. It is the manifestation of all of them in one particular medium, the expression of thought-provoking ideas on paper. When I follow my gifts, rewards manifest. In woodcrafts, there is the smoothness that wood grain gains after hours of sanding and staining and buffing. In art, there is the visualizations of the gatherings of interactions of Africans. In visualizations of gatherings and interactions, Africans in villages and as in a nation freely interacting within the freedoms and limits of their own empowerment. In writing, there is the critical thinking required to express even the simplest thoughts well. In planning or in planting, there are the seeds known to bring dormant minds out of the concrete and into the sunshine. In explaining, there is the placing of points in sequence so that sense is not hidden or made abnormal. In ordering inner and outer space, there is the using of information that developed into knowledge, which evolved into wisdom, working with an uncorrupted imagination to educate in context. In chess, there is the incorporation of a game plan in a world of hostile pieces. In listening to music, there was rhythm and thought and emotions working and playing together. And in fighting, there is the venting of righteous rage against those who seek to destroy our ancestors, us and our children. For me, though, writing all of this becomes one mission statement. Writing is a gift, not to be taken lightly by warriors, using it to cut deeply into and against menticides. Let me say, when he says menticide, he's speaking about the mental destruction of the African mind he's speaking about when he speaks about menticide. And the true means or the true idea behind menticide is not only destruction of the mind, but destruction of the people as well, the body as well. Whether the choice is to be done, one who writes or rewrites the present into living. Ancient reality for us is or one who corrects the insidious lies written about us by covetous others. This task should not be taken lightly. Writing is no game. It is a blunt, broad, ragged gift, only sharpened and refined by using a paper whetstone. Serious, possessed writers recognize it as very delicate, precious gift, a blessing that has the power to memorize, mesmerize, and captivate, as well as to bewilder and rule its vessel whether deep in the night, whether conversing with friends or family, in rush hour, during a movie, at the store, or wherever. Whenever the ancestors call you to write, carry your tools always, for wise. It is a gift that cannot be returned, but must be shared. Warriors cannot just write. They cannot just speak with their pens as if writing is a detached art. They must make people feel their writing. Their writings, in whatever form, must lead by doing to productivity, to action. The job of the writer is to make revolutions irresistible. Action refines words, it fulfills them. Writing compels even more effective action by stripping away the utopian from the practical. It is a glorious cycle of an unfolding, refined determination. In a politicized context, energy will be political. Therefore, it should be consciously political. Anything less is waste. As Manuel Ampin cautions us of the same with respect to lecturing. In exchange for money, ego and sex, writing is just writing. Without a dedicated, directed potency, it serves no liberating purpose. Only hedonism profits. Okay. So if you're just writing for money, you don't really have a purpose. But if you're writing to bring people to revolution, then you're writing for a purpose. For those who choose to follow this calling, this can be no game. We are not playing with words. They are our weapons of choice. Words give meaning. Meaning awakens power. Power secures life. It is a sacred gift, an ancestral calling, a critical, crucial mission, an extraordinary, life-giving task. Do not squander your gift. If it is not exercised properly, it will atrophy. So, African warrior writers, what are the African rules of communicating with the community? They are commonsensical. You must know your audience. You must know that compared to Negroes and lost souls, it is a select few. It is a quality, not quantity, that we must measure progress by. No revolution was initiated by the many. So, in knowing the mind of our select few, the question of the purpose of a revolution must be kept in mind. For they are not the minds to wait to be revolutionary until Euros outgrow their pathologies and call them to integrate with them. They are not seeking to integrate at all, and they are definitely not seeking to amalgamate or assimilate into any kind of whiteness. Knowing the determination of that consciousness to become more African, more knowledgeable of our enemies, we know we cannot speak to them as we would to Africans full of fear or European hope. They are Asafo, too, sworn African warrior scholars. They seek only to be better prepared for battle. Talk to them, and they will lead your research by asking questions. We must give them answers to think about. Common sense is knowledge, is as valid and worthy as any other. Dealing with evil day in and day out, from 9 to 5, year after year, is knowledge. Watching their family fall apart. Excuse me 1 minute, we'll just stop this noise. So speak with them as the lovings, dedicate the sermons to them that they are. Speak without fear or concern for minds which cannot listen to or comprehend because of snow blindness. Speak truth. Our warriors, young and old, are apt students, eager to be able to discuss for edification, not augmentation. We are building an African nation together. We lead by example, not through proselytizing, browbeating, or begging. We are not looking to recruit those who hate all in them, that is African, but we will begrudgingly accept our brotherly regard for them as means to gain any love. We are neither out to enrich our pockets, nor do we aspire to be any level of poverty. We are at war. We carry it on our backs. Security is not possible for either the dominated or corrupted, or dominator or corruptor in states of domination and chaos. Feelings of security of softened individuals. Privilege weakens them. It tears at spiritual connections. Illusory elevated. The I above the we. And arrogance, however subtle or innocent, is privilege's bedfellow. Therefore, we know that money is not our primary objective, for money cannot, in and of itself, solve any of our problems. It is not supposed to. Money doesn't think. As Amos Wilson articulated so well, currency is a set of relationships between people that facilitates the development and distribution of needed goods and services. It is the creation, cause, and direction of what flows. It is not what is exchanged that flow. It is not what is exchanged in that flow. Therefore, material prosperity is tertiary concern for building, family, and nation building. If it comes down to the personal risk involved in being African in a place where people will try to financially hurt you because of it, questions whether the Creator and the ancestors have ever allowed you to do without your basic needs being met. Warriors thrive regardless of conditions, and wealth is relative. Endless your struggle must seem to those whose vision reaches only to the end of the day. In our writing for family, we must always have a certain central question. What is it that they need? What can I say that will help lead them to the strength they need? How can I make them know that they are never alone in their self-love and searing critique of their people's destroyers? What will help them preserve the peace they need to be and remain at war? They must recognize our words and not only nod and smile and laugh and say teach, because what they read is what they would say or write if they had the time or this particular gift. We must speak with them about tradition, about love, about family, community and nationhood, about healing, and rising above the enemies without and within. Literary expression is far more, or is no more, than a particular contribution to an African sanity. It is no more or less than any other gift it combines with to nourish our struggle. The wording and meaning must be crystal clear. At no point should the reader become confused due to a gratuitous, superfluous jargon or loquacious, exotic irrelevancies. Do not play with their minds. Keep it simple, not simplistic. Make it readable to your mother, your father, your sister or brother, or childhood friends. There is, of course, no reason why you should not introduce our readers to concepts and theories and ideologies that may be important for deeper interpretations of reality. However, there must be a purpose behind this introduction. It cannot merely be for the sake of higher diseducation, i.e. merely demonstrating some elitist expertise. It must serve them, their African central intellectual needs, not your ego. Also, convoluted and overtly dense sentences, as well as unnecessary complex syntax, are useless for nation builders. They serve no purpose or no practical purpose. Be succinct, be concise. If you know it, you can explain it to anybody, but be a teacher who knows that her or his audience and students are his or her family. Such workers' writings have divine purpose. It is to change our cultural aspirations, the way we prioritize things, so the Europeans do not become the model of what we desire to become. We must first systematically create a psychological and behavioral void in the writers and in their readers' beings, divesting them of all this is European. And then it must fill this void with political, educational, spiritual, familial, sexual, economic, military models fashioned in the African tradition. What it gives to fill this void must be explained for African people in such a way and in such detail that questions of what to do remain solely the domain of the non-thinkers. Mental rhetoric. We must be clear as to the ancestors' intent. Without cultural context, without the writer's full immersion in African traditions, without a living African-centered interpretation of others and our reality, however, this is not possible. For there is no destroying the weight of European traditions in this literate world without a clear, practiced, conscious writing. The Europeans' way exists and is sustained for good reason. The makers have forged a world where it is easiest for them to be considered normal. African scholars, writers must, or African warrior scholar writers must make it unbearable for us to be that kind of normal. We must stand and say what must be said. We must make instruments of writing our weapons of choice. We must turn our pens into weapons that deliver the word, clearly, quietly, and devastatingly. So that was the end of that chapter called Deliver the Word. So he's saying here that writers must write for their audience, and writing can't be for writing's sake. Because like the West, for example, they're artists for decoration, they're artists for art's sake. Well, African art normally gets a great deal of symbolism, is it? It's a much deeper thing to find the symbols and ideas that will bring us, connect us to our worldview, which is a holistic view. Because in the African view, everything is one. Everything is the creator, the world, people, the trees, the mountains. It is all one. So, and also we've got our spiritual needs as well. We're very spiritual people. So spirit is the key. It's that spirit which really connects, because the creator spirit is in everything. So that's why there is a oneness there. Okay. The Western world is kind of despiritualized. So they're about decoration and making money, their art. Their art, for the most part, no doubt there'll be exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's not really that deep, it's not really that spiritual like our culture is. Okay, so this is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show, every Sunday between 4 and 6 p.m. So the next chapter is called Nana John Henry Clark. So John Henry Clark is an elder who passed away, I think last year he passed away. No, my apologies, he passed away quite a few years ago, John Henry Clark. He was a brilliant scholar, and he wrote many, many books, and a lot of scholars looked up to him as an elder. So this chapter is about Dr. John Henry Clark. I've got a couple of quotes here. I've got the African proverb, the ability to see shows a person the way, which is a Kikuyu, which is the people in the Kenya region proverb. The one who is nearest their enemy in pursuit is the real leader. And that is another African proverb as well. Okay, so Nana John Henry Clark, this chapter is called. And we are reading the book called Menticide, by Walimu Bomani Baruti. Excuse me. Time has passed since Nana John Henry Clark left this realm and ascended into the pure spirit, joining our ancestors. But we still miss him as if it were only yesterday, for he was a sure, steadfast, incorruptible voice among us. Unfortunately, too many of us never knew his words, never heard his loving man speak. And among those of us who did, some have even forgotten to remember his power. If I interject here, I remember I saw John Henry Clark speak in North London, in Tottenham actually, Broadwater Farm. He was a very deep thinker. He had a lot of wisdom. He read so many books, you might call him Billy Liar. He read so many books, you wouldn't believe how many books he read. It was like an encyclopedia himself, so he had so much wisdom. But it wasn't just the reading, it was his analysis. He had a very sharp intellect. So no other historian has been held in such a high esteem by Africans seeking an African truth, uncontaminated by others, cultural politics as he. This African warrior scholar was unafraid of our enemies, within and without. He neither honored nor owed them. He did not lie to us. He had no reason to. His Nanasam, his wise words, told us true stories as a people of unremitting rebellion against an assimilated, amalgamated, vanquished sub-integration into whiteness. He was our Baba, our educator, warrior, our historian, always standing on the first line of intellectual defense. He was a true Jegna. Although only one of many warrior scholars to recognize and boldly speak our truth, he brought our thinking into tighter focus. He taught us that Africa, our Keblan, is our source, our mother, our essence, our beating heart. He consistently looked to where we came from for his lead. He used the ancestors as a rod to gauge our progress, the compass to direct our spiritual, cultural, and political footsteps, the map to locate our way. From his analysis, we know that Africans everywhere are African, no matter their confusion or denial. We understand that family, that nation, while having a specific geographical space at home, has no geographical boundaries. It is wherever his members are. He taught us that our ancestors were a loving, gentle, civil people who sought to build a world based on Ma'at, a way of being which reflected the universe they studied as they modeled existence. He removed any question of their compromise prior to Arab and European conquest. Never did we as a people knowingly choose otherwise or other ways over our own. In fact, they gave their very lives fighting to keep foreign ways and their carriers out of our space and family. There is no question that the invaders from the north and the east brought us nothing that we did not already have better. He unveiled our enemies before us. Neither Europeans nor Arabs are family. Whether they come with smiles or guns, they are the destroyers of our family. They are aliens. They are invaders. We are not them. Therefore, we should always be on our guard against aping and internalizing those thoughts and behaviors that are peculiarly theirs. but which they and their African pets attempt to graft onto our traditions. Following the guidance given him by Arthur Schomburg, he studied those who work towards our death in order to be more holistically, correctly interpret what we have become ourselves. So let me repeat that again. Following the guidance given to him by Arthur Schomburg, he studied those who work towards our death in order to be more holistically correctly interpret what had become of us. He studied and he found an evil genius at work against us. He then showed us that not only are Europeans calculating, deadly, insatiable, and serial predators, but they are also the worst types of predator because they delight in other people's pain. They are conscious, born killers who feed on destruction, impassioned by and living for the simple pleasures that they uniquely derive from the painful inflicted on from the pain inflicted on others. Nana Clark brought us source after source attesting to these facts. He revealed the insane in their own words. He confirmed beyond the shadow of doubt that we are dealing with beings without emotional content. They do not experience doubt or remorse for their barbaric and unwarranted aggressions. The evidence of their extreme inhumanity is all around us. They have no respect for each other unless they perceive themselves to be threatened by other people, and their respect for those others is even less. They have no love of self and therefore can have no love of others. They only seek dominative power over others. That defines them, that gives them life. Nana masterfully pointed out how, over centuries of practice on their wives, daughters, sisters, mothers, sons, animals, and each other, European men systematically went about the business of raping African women and girls to create children whose loyalty rested with their fathers, but who were installed as politically and culturally castrated princes to rule over houses. Our historically mulattoes are politically engineered. It is Europeans who created and empowered this divisive, privileged, quasi-white caste. Wherever they encountered others, they continue this process to date, whether the rape victim volunteers or not, whether the offspring recognizes his or her role as a pawn or not. In every statement, he cautioned us to question every European fact and every interpretation of these facts. We should know better than to believe that liars speak truth. We should keep that in mind. We should know better than to believe that liars speak truth. Their arrogance as a written historical record reveals their conniving intent. But their words, when spoken to us in person, are no more than rhetorical ethic. To them, truth is spoken only from the expediency of a lie. For them, a lie is simply a strategically placed fiction designed to keep those more powerful than them from believing that their tormentors can truly be that evil, and from using that knowledge to regain their balance of power. Nana reminded us in the rage opened by the wake of our awakening that love of self combined with dynamic awareness of their historical reaction towards us is the solution to our plight. Let me repeat that. Nana reminded us in rage opened by the wake of our awakening that love of self combined with our dynamic awareness of their historical reaction towards us is the solution to our plight. We are our only solution, yet our solution must speak to our enemies within and without in a language they understand. We must define the standard and control the voice of our community. He explained to us that freedom will only come at our own minds and hands. Power is never given away by those in power. They do not take their privilege lightly. Power is taken by those now conscious actors who have been made to think that they were powerless. Conscious power is the result of a clear-sighted political education intended to teach us to know and how to properly handle our power. Conscious power is necessarily exercised to the benefit of its holders. He used himself as a model of African power. He provided that example of one who knew what had happened to us. He applied the understanding to the simple truth that to change the future, you must change the present. With this meager income, he set a true genuine example of adopting a community on the continent and being there for them. His thought was his word was his deed. He taught us to see that in the past is the present, is the future. There is no meaningful divide. He invited us to think as Africans. Surely, if you think yourself as an African warrior scholar, you should study this man for yourself and your children. His notes towards an African revolution, world revolution, who betrayed the African world revolution, and Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust are invaluable. John Henry Clark, his life, his words, his works are compiled by his lifelong secretary scholar friend, Anna Swanton. Is also a must-read. He was an incredibly sane and beautiful mind. Nana Clark's seeds are planted everywhere we find nation builders. And although he's scattered around the globe, we grow together under the shade of his deep and abiding wisdom. There is no doubt that the African royal priesthood, which he instructed us to build into an institution, has already taken firm root in that rich black soil of our ancestors' blood and spirits. There is no way we can repay this man for what he sacrificed for us. He is beyond human reward. The ancestors deified greatness. We must deify Nana Clark through practice. We must burn his words into our actions. The elders say that an ancestor lives as long as his name is called. So, in the tradition of holding an absolute respect for one of our most dedicated and venerated ancestors, we say, Nana Clark, today, tomorrow, and forever, we honor you. That was a deep one there. Dr. John Henry Clark. So he mentioned his books there. He had many books, but he mentioned our special ones. One book that we should have is called Notes Towards an African Revolution. Who Betrayed the African World Revolution? Is one book. And the other book, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, is another book. Very good. And also, Dr. John Henry Clark, his life, his words, his works, is also another book we could get. Yeah, so John Henry Clark, his books are very, very powerful. Okay, so the next chapter is called Asafo. Let me have a quick look. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. We are reading a book called Menticide. We've got about 3 more chapters there. So we're reading a book called Menticide by Walimu Bomani Baruti. Okay, so the next chapter is called Asafo. And it's got a quote at the beginning by Hannibal Afric. When you fall, don't analyze where you have fallen, and analyze where you have stumbled. Let me repeat that one. When you fall, don't analyze where you have fallen, analyze where you have stumbled. And that's a quote by Hannibal Afric. I continue. To be an Asafo, means to be a member of the African warrior class. It means that you have put away the fruits and toys of this European world and are consciously, committedly, and aggressively, uncompromisingly, and completely employing your African spirit, mind, and body into the battle to combat the destruction of African people. It means that you know that any conversations with your enemies ended the moment that they assaulted one of us. And you know that conversation ended 4,000 years ago. It means that you know that the word warrior is not just a title you use to impress yourself and others while you are doing nothing worthy of it. Being a warrior is not play. It is not a game. It is not pretend, make-believe, or fantasy. It is not a badge or uniform you wear to impress those who you want to hold in awe or a bed. Being an African warrior scholar, an Asafo, means that you are studying and acting on our story as if your children's future depended on it, not repeating any of your known mistakes. It means that you know that the root word in warrior is mistakes. It means that you know that the root word in warrior is war, and being a warrior means that you are willingly engaged in battle to defeat anyone who acts in a warlike fashion towards your people. People die in war. People lose their minds in war. Security, safety, possession, and, all too often, friends disappear. People discover their weakness in war. They discover their strengths. Heroes and sheroes are born of war. But a warrior without a people will never be heroic. For without a people, there's no one to name or honor you. Could someone give me some water? Warriorhood has always been in the highest honor of youth, could aspire to attain when his or her people are fighting for their very survival against unrelenting and merciless enemy. Warriorhood has always been the calling of young men and women who refuse to accept their people's defeat as inevitable. We call those who embrace this calling Asafo, and an Asafo have specific responsibilities and possess certain uncompromising, honorable qualities. Not just anyone can be an Asafo. It requires a special kind of African, one who can stand alone and together with us with no fear. To begin, Asafo refused to be at peace with anything less than the total liberation of their people. They daily affirm, I am an African warrior, a warrior scholar. I refuse to be at peace with anything less. They are culturally and politically Pan-African nationalists. They believe that the African people are African wherever they are found. In other words, the Asafo believes that he or she should unselfishly devote the same dedication and energy to the defense and empowerment of Africans everywhere. An Asafo is not a racist. In fact, he is clearly understood that he or she would never act as a racist. That would be distracting and beneath these healers. There is no confusion. There is no definition. There is no confusion here in definition. Their loyalty is conscious, race conscious, placing race first. Or, as the Honourable Marcus Messiah Garvey would say, Asafo are race men and race women. They know that their family is first. They know that to be pro-black is not to be anti-white, unless Europeans interfere with them doing their work. Asafos are not Negroes. Instead, they are the antithesis of the Negro, and far from confusion of lost souls. Asafos are educators. They are not Western teachers. They politically explain conditions so that their children, their students, will become better warrior scholars than they are. Teachers merely dispense another's information in order to train their students to become passive, obedient, non-thinking citizens in an alienating culture and society. Asafos teach their students how to think as Africans. Asafos do not separate word from deed, leaving their people without a viable working example to guide them in freeing their minds would be outside their African reason. Asafos are workers of the first order and therefore leaders of their people's way. Leaders by example, they are doers, nation builders, makers of their people's way. They are always the newest vanguard. In this respect, the Asafo is a non-intellectual because he or she practically applies his or her knowledge. They do not see war as waged in some great, distractive, endless debate. They will never validate meaningless arguments through participation. Ignorance can be corrected. Stupidity cannot. There must be a field application of tactics and strategies. As educators, Asafos fit information into reality. They understand the culture or story, which has created our people's conditions and distorted our vision. Asafos study the problem, internally and externally, not those victimized by it. Victims are studied only to access how they can be assisted in building up their defenses against the sources of their problems. None among this vanguard identifies Africans as the core problem. So whatever external symptoms they observe are logically attributed to our cultural misorientation. Once they recognize truth, Asafos do not pass on their miseducation. They correct it. They educate themselves so that they can teach an ancient unfolding African truth. Therefore, they read a revolutionary art story. They study African-centered interpretations of the causes of and solutions to our people's problems. They feed themselves on the community from the libraries they build. A male Asafo unconditionally respects African women. He is their defender, their lover, their divine complement. A female Asafo unconditionally respects African men. She is their defender, their lover, their divine complement. Their end is the same. No African community rests. No African community exists without the guard of his man or woman, Asafo, regardless of the division of their labor and responsibilities during war. No one can do all. War is a responsibility shared by all. Those who guard the community's exterior and those who guard the interior have the same mission, protection. They are just doing this work in different locations. Asafo are the entrepreneurs. They instill independence into other Africans by finding ways to provide, regardless of circumstance. They creatively control the process of production, the input, the throughput, and the output. They distinguish wealth from income and power from influence. They do not confuse power with impotence. Independent empowerment, not sub-integration, is their single-minded mission, because they know that the quality of their substance is felt through its ability to autonomously determine its own path. Our enemies should not employ us. Can you give some water, please? People hold loyalty to those who feed them. Therefore, Asafo create meaningful employment because they also know that poverty spawns antagonisms among the people. Finally, Asafo defends our perimeters. They form the first and second lines of defense of our people for most valuable resources, especially our children and elders. Can you give me a tissue as well, please? Please serve it. Thank you. Finally, Asafos defend their perimeters. They form the first and second lines of defense of our people for our most valuable resources, especially our elders and children. Male Asafo patrol the inner boundaries of our communities. Females Asafo protect the core. Our Asafo are always prepared. Thank you. Our Asafos are always prepared for any exigency. Excuse me 1 minute, please. Okay. Male or female, our Asafo are exactors of justice, using non-violence as only one tactic in a large collection of measures making up their strategic arsenal. They clearly speak to their European and any other enemy in the language they understand. They also speak in the language of those Africans who menticidally seek to help destroy our community. Whoever the listeners, the words of an Asafo cuts deep and clean. No one leaves with doubt as to his or her intent. Mature Asafo protect our daughters from misguided sons, sons from misguided daughters, and both from confused peers. They protect our children from the enemy's media invasion. They are ready to die for our children, all of them. Being an Asafo is not an easy choice, but it is a choice. No one is going to beg or baby you. You must rise up because you feel a deeply spiritual reason, because Asafo choose themselves. Obviously, it is not a decision to be taken lightly. An entire race depends on our ability to uncompromisingly be African. An entire people is dependent on your unwavering courage and dedication to its survival and empowerment. We absolutely depend on our knowledge, our skills and genius. So, we do not choose without deep and serious forethought. We have no reason for either vacillation or equivocation. Okay, so there we are. That's another one there. Asafo is a warrior who will give his life for his people, protector of the people. It's similar to the word Jegna, which is like a protector of the people, the children, the culture, the land. So an Asafo is like a warrior who knows that the battle is ahead and he knows who the enemy is. And whether it's male or female, their job is to protect, maintain, and make grow the African family. So it's very deep there. So I'm going to have a quick drink now. So this is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. We are reading a book called Menticide. Excuse me 1 moment. So that was Asafo. The next chapter is called Gratitude. And I've got a quote here. This is the African proverb. She who knows the path is she who travels it. So this chapter is called Gratitude. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. And we're reading a book called Menticide. And we're coming near the end now. Maybe only a couple of chapters left. We speak in honor of those African warrior scholars who have consistently proven their worth. We speak in honor of those whose feet we are humbly sit and study so that we can learn how to be the warriors for our people. We speak in honor of those Genok, who know no way other than that of their ancestors. We who have done and continue to do all and more in their power to confront, battle and destroy any who would take the knowledge of the third eye from our children. We speak in honor of those who unhesitatingly fought, fight and will forever do battle for us, simply because we are their people. Our children are their children. Our spirit are one. We speak in honor of those who have unerringly paved the way on the battlefield, who made a way when we could not see for our ignorance and near comatose submission, also stood alone when we were too afraid or ignorant to answer the war horn. This praise song is for those who, since consciousness, have not committed treason against their ancestors, who have consistently stayed on the revolutionary path of the deeply dedicated, uncompromising warrior scholar, who honor our ancestors for what they do and say. These warriors to whom we give glory are not only the ones whose names roll off so easy off our tongues, but also those mamas and babas who taught us to never put anything past Europeans because they had already done everything that beyond human reason to us, that they stood in line waiting to cash their meager checks from working in their tormentors' kitchens, offices and barracks. They are those who fed and washed us while watching us family first, race first, true first, who worked 10, 12, 20 hours a day trying to get us that autobiography, our story book. This praise is also for those who have thought, acted and spoken and donned attire as Africans first and consistently, regardless of the ridicule from our community and Euros. These trailblazers, vanguards, tall men and women refuse to be anything but who they are and what they are. Sadly now, Negroes changing only when forced to, and even then only with the major superficial level of knowing, changing to diffuse the revolutionary quality of our re-Africanization, so as not to offend our enemies, receive credit for and enjoy the fruits of our warrior hard labor. This tribute is not for those who have retired from the revolution, who were ready for revolution at one time, but only for that time, who were part of some self-serving, pus-filled, bloated memory of revolution. It is not to be wasted on fair weather warriors, intellectualizing crossover, con artists, amalgamation, focus, integrationists, New Age Negroes, or any other hybrid Afropeans, who on bending knee desperately fumble in search of any European's crotch to worship. These words are only in appreciation for those who know us and our foes, who know we are not they, who never ever quit on us. They are only to give thanks for those who refuse to stop struggling in the face of our abject deadening fatigue, or the easy enticements of smiling cooperations into yesterday's dreams of whiteness and bribes guaranteeing lifetimes of an exclusively individualized financial independence. Opportunism was never a possibility, because embracing the opportunity to pass into whiteness is nothing less than treason. Soldiers fight as long as the battle rages, as long as their people exist as a people, as a collective memory, as a willed vision. You Africans have never disappointed us. You have never stopped. So we honor you for your birth in the lineage of our warriors, that ancestors deliberately sent onto these enslavers, ships and plantations, so that there would be a force to lead African people in revolution against those who held us against our will. Hopelessness and resignation never surface in any word or action of divine warriors. They never enter your imagination. You have always reflected the righteousness of rage, and spirit denied its full humanity. For this we freely give our love and respect. For this we humbly offer our gratitude. So there's a gratitude for the elders, the warriors who kept on fighting. This is a hard job, fighting. There are many people who fell by the wayside. It's a hard fight, but it's a fight worth giving because it's for our children. Do we want our children to live the life that we lived or our ancestors lived? Under these destructive people. If we want our children to be free, we have to keep on fighting. It's very simple. We just have to keep on going as long as we can. As long as we've got breath in our body, we have to keep on going. So this chapter is called Independently African. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. And this is the last chapter. This is the Afrocentric Bookman Show. We are reading a book called Mentorcide by Walimu Domani Baruti. It's a collection of essays about the African world, where we are and where we need to go, and things which are hard, things we have to think about before, if we really want to get to where we want to get to, which is liberation. This is the last chapter now, and it's called Independently African. And we've got about 25 minutes left of the show. We must prove our predictions against the future with actions. So that is why George Jackson, well, I repeat, we must prove our predictions about the future with actions. So some people says that nobody can tell the future, which is true. However, if you want the future to be what you want it to be, you need to work, you need to make your future. So we just need to do what we need to do to get the future we want. We have a habit of complaining. This is terrible. We need to stop complaining. That's too late now. We need to move forward and complain if we need to complain with our actions to build the world we want. And also, we cannot treat each other badly as we move forward to get where we want to get, to move forward to the liberation we want to get to. Why? Because we can't wait till we get to where we want to get to start treating others how we should. We need to treat other right now. We need to act with ma'at, be respectful and kind and helpful and honest and truthful with each other now. So when we get to our journey, the end of our journey, we know we treat each other as we need to treat each other already, and it becomes second nature. We need to treat each other right now. That will build unity, that will build strength, and that will help us to get where we need to get to. Yeah? Okay. So, final chapter, and it's called Independently African. For most of us to step out on our own, as we say, entrepreneurs, is a very frightening prospect, because we have existed in a state of social and economic disadvantage and deprivation for so long, and whatever level of success in the mainstream, in speech marks, has meant us becoming something else. We intensely fear the possibility of failure because we know where the bottom is. To be an African at the bottom is to be unknown and without. We also know, even if only subconsciously, that we subsist in a state of insecurity, for there is no secure job here for Africans. There is no secure investment here for Africans. Yet we are compelled, in order to feel sane, to feel that at least, minimally, the security of insecurity will at least feed, clothe, and house us. However, the risks that becoming independent will involve are considered out of the question. The risk of losing all forever is too great, too terrible, an end to imagine. So most of us should not try. Most of us do not even consider trying, except possibly dangling from the coattails of someone more daring, a little crazier, someone with nothing to lose because they have nothing of substance anyway, except a dogged determination to win at any cost and any compromise. We also know that many Europeans fail to succeed in their efforts to become independently wealthy in their own game. And we know that what may befall us, if we try and fail, is immeasurably worse. We calculate the probability of our success in their world, given their experience of failure in it. We are even less inclined to seriously consider stepping out on our own as Africans, centered in a self-defining, self-determining, liberating vision for our people. Even the possibility of such thoughts brings on the worst fears, images of a social nature, and even a physical death tortures any semblance of peace we may have found in food, drugs, and sex, comedy, and makeovers. If our mind slips in that direction, it is bad enough to want to succeed as a lost soul or Negro in an enemy's world. To contemplate and act on being someone's European system, to contemplate and act on being something Europeans systematically seek to remove from our memory would be suicidal. This inbred trepidation is why we remain a global power minority. It is why, even with sporadic occasional victories, our nation-building efforts falter. Those of us with the skills and courage become sidetracked by the fear of the unknown in a known anti-African world. We do not see our historical possibilities exhibited time and time again by a people determined to be African, because we have come to value surviving and destructive trinkets over living with power. And our children see our model and become us as they turn against us for fearing those who wantonly destroy them. And as African warrior scholars, we also can be said to have a choice. We can pretend trying to blend African trappings with European imperatives. We can pretend to be Afro-Europeans, emissaries, or we can remove all contradictions in what we think, say, and do as our people's revolutionaries and become independently African. Let me repeat that. Or we can remove all contradictions in what we think, say, and do as our people's revolutionaries and become independently African. And then again, this is not true. We do not have a choice. If we have truly removed all uncompromising intent and anti-African motivations, then there is no choice. If we have chosen to be African warrior scholars, then there is not even any potential partial European options to consider. All was decided when we swore never again to commit treason against our ancestors. At that point, we decided to be nothing less than African. If some choice still remains, then we have not truly decided to be African warrior scholars. Re-Africanization and nation building have no room for grey areas. But the question remains, how do we do this? How do we become independently African in a global sea of anti-African insanity? How do we be African? We do this by moving on with what we know, without doubt, without regret, without fear. We do this by taking the time to deeply and courageously think of just what institutions or actions Africans need to become truly liberated, and making that into a reality. We just do it. Most of us have African dreams. We know based on our experiences of this reality, just what we need to do and build in order to move us toward liberation as a people. We know if there's no obstacles that we would easily do. We know if there were no obstacles what we would instantly do. To become independently African, we must do these things and never concern ourselves unreasonably with the reaction of others. We must act as if we must answer to our ancestors, our children, and the unborn. We must act as if this is our testing ground, as if what we righteously do here will determine whether we will be honored as warrior scholars or dismissed as traitors when we make our transition and are judged. Excuse me. Obviously, it is not easy to step out and be African. What semblance of security we feel quickly disappears, and only lifelines that appear to be dangling before us are those which put us straight back into the chaos. And has been said, it is even more difficult a choice to work towards being independently African because we have consciously chosen to burn those bridges forever. There is no return except as a humiliated, impoverished slave. Yet we know that there is nothing. Yes, we know that nothing is impossible. We have been taught this. We have witnessed this. So we know that being independently African requires no more than a conscious and committed state of mind. It requires us to do more. It requires us to do no more than say we will do what must be done. Be it taking our children out of the system designed to corrupt and suppress their genius and building schools for them in our homes, or providing politically imprisoned warriors with study materials and words of encouragement and establishing farming cooperatives to feed our families nutritious foods, or developing rural and urban collectives as individuals who feel the need to operate as traditional African communities, using our traditional languages and ways of doing, or providing natural arts and tactical and survival training for our youths so they can learn how to fully defend our communities and even extend themselves unnoticed into enemy territory when necessary. We must take the time to daily ask ourselves, if an African thinks victoriously but does not act on those thoughts, will anything be accomplished? Revolution requires revolutionary thoughts, which have not been disarmed by selfish mortal fears, to be acted upon. Righteous rage by itself never removed evildoers from power. It is the action which directly and uncompromisingly comes from these thoughts which produces results. As the elders say, talk is cheap. And that is the end of the book, people. So we've been reading for maybe about 5 or 6 weeks now. Menticide, it's a powerful book. And the final chapter there, to become independently African. So let me read this final paragraph here. It says, we must take the time to daily ask ourselves, if an African thinks victoriously but does not act on those thoughts, will anything be accomplished? Revolution requires revolutionary thoughts, which have not been disarmed by selfish mortal fears, to be acted upon. Righteous rage by itself never removed evildoers from power. It is the action which directly and uncompromisingly comes from these thoughts which produces results. As the elders say, talk is cheap. So, can we become independently African? Can we have independent African communities? I think it's the key to the story, or key to the problem, or the issue we find ourselves in. So we have to think about all areas of human activity. Labour, as in employment, jobs, education, war, economics, religion, all these areas we have to control ourselves. Money is needed, wealth is needed. So if we did what we used to call a partner, they in Africa they got another name for it, Susu economics, where we come together, we pool our money, and then draw the money at a time when we're going to buy a business, going to buy land, going to buy a property. It's not hard to do. We've done it before. Our parents, our elders came here in this country, in the UK anyway, and that's how they bought their houses. That's how they bought things, by pooling their money. Yeah, I know that certain people who run many of the hair care stores you go to, that's what they did. They'll throw a partner with like £10,000 hands. So when it's a draw, they may be drawing out 100,000, and then they can buy their shop, set themselves up, and then they hire people within the shop, and it goes on and on and on. So it's not exactly something we don't do. That's what we need to do that way, yeah? Also, our spirituality. We need to really get rid of the gods of our oppressor. Because the thing is, many people are very deep Christian or deeply Muslim as well. They need to really ask themselves, how did they become Muslim? Was it by choice? Did they just say, yeah, okay, let's become Muslim, I think it's a good idea? Or was it by force? We need to check our history. How did African people become Christians? And people say, well, there are Ethiopian Christians, which is very true. But the Ethiopian Christians are not the majority. How did Nigeria, Ghana, so many other countries become Europeanized? Because that's what Christianity does to us, yeah? It makes us Europeans. And if you read the writing of Europeans, you'll see this is what it did. I hope that you know that King Leopold in Belgium, who killed maybe 10, 12 million people in the Congo, the letter he wrote to the priests, he said, destroy their culture. He said to the priests, your job is not to teach people about God, because they know about God. Your job is to basically manipulate the minds of these people so we can create wealth from them. Teach them that poverty is good. Teach them to not think about the gold and the silver and whatever else is in the earth. Think about, teach them to read but not think. So when we, African nations got independence from Europeans, we still kept the institutions there, their curriculum, their religion. So if we leave Europeans' institutions there, effectively the Europeans are still there, because we still use that same mindset to proceed. Their curriculum is teaching us about Christopher Columbus and other ridiculous things there. We don't know our own history. If you speak to some Africans, students, ask them who Columbus is, which the church is, they'll tell you. If you ask them who Imhotep is, or Akhenaten is, they don't know, they don't have a clue. So how can they know Europeans, history and culture, but they don't know their own? Do you think Europeans will know more? And I saw a video the other day by Harikana Chiambori, the excellent, she used to be an ambassador to the US for the African Union, and she says that there's still something wrong with our minds. He says that, they said that in Nigeria, for example, a white tramp could put a suit on and go into a bank, and the bank will lend him money. But a Nigerian going to the bank to get money for business, they'll say no to him or give him a hard time. He says we've still got this colonial mindset that when we see whiteness, for some reason our mind automatically says, oh, that's good, we'll give them what they want. And the key reason behind that is the image of the creator they left with us. I was told many, many years ago that when you used to drive through the capital of Ghana, you saw these big, massive posters of this big white Jesus, and they were put up there by some American Christian society. Why would the American Christian societies put up big banners of Jesus, this big white-faced, blonde-haired Jesus in the capital of Ghana? It's to imprison our minds. So when even the politicians sit down at government level with the IMF and the World Bank and look across the table and see white people, subconsciously in their mind, they're saying that Jesus was white as well. So when the white man says, this is what you're going to do, they're not even arguing. So it's a mental thing. We still got there, and we need to get rid of it. We've already read on this show the book called Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And he speaks about how many of these things that we do today, when we was enslaved or colonized, it kept us alive. But now physical slavery has ended and physical colonization has ended. We need to get rid of these things from our psyche because they're detrimental to us moving forward. So we really need to work on this. African politicians need to be brave. They need to get some African psychologists into their lands and work on the people. They should get a TV show and work on the people's mind, because we still see whiteness as greatness and blackness, our own colour skin, as something terrible. Europeans had our minds in colonization for 60, 70, 80 years, depending on what nation it was. They had our minds in bondage and slavery for like 300-400 years, and it's still going on now. We do not, or we're too scared to deal with the psychological damage that these European systems have done to our minds. And it's still going on today. We have to, somebody said that before, that we need to hold a conference to confront these issues. A real conference that says, with big banners, the black man is scared of the white man. And going there, then we confront the issue and then we'll deal with it. But at the moment, we dance around it and we're scared to talk about it. I remember the Ghanaian president, he welcomed, what's his name, the French Prime Minister, Macron. And he's giving him these and he said, well done and beautiful, and treating him like a gentleman. He should say to him, by the way, you steal 400 billion out of Africa every year. It's about time you stopped. The Ghana Prime Minister also said one time that we think that we should teach our children French as a second language. So they've got English and they've got French as the key two languages. Why don't they learn Swahili? Why don't they teach them Yoruba? What are you teaching them European languages for? To further enslave the mind of the children? We need to disrupt all these curriculums and throw them away. They're not fit for purpose. We're African people. Why have we got European curriculums? Do Europeans, do Americans have African curriculums there? We need to ask ourselves why. We need to confront these issues here. We've got some issues with our psychology, and unless we confront them, we're not dealing with it. That's what this book was about. This book here had a lot of uncomfortable things in this book. And the good thing about it is, it just makes us deal with it. If we try to hide from it, things will stay the same. Do we want our children's children to be in the same predicament we're in now? Worshipping gods not our own, and these white images have a psychological effect on us? We need to deal with it. Curriculum, we need to throw away these curriculums, the European curriculum, because it's based on the European mind. You must remember, these colonial curriculums were there to make Africans better servants, to serve Europeans and rich Europeans. We need to confront these issues there, throw it away, and start with a clean slate, and create a curriculum which empowers us, a curriculum that is fit for purpose for our future, for liberation. I don't want to pick on Ghana, but I think the Prime Minister there, he wants to build a church and spend hundreds of millions of Ghanaians' money. So they start praying to this white God again, hundreds of millions. That means we are further enslaving ourselves. Why don't they use 100 million there and build a Silicon Valley in Ghana? So our children, the children there, become some of the greatest technicians and scientists that there is. But we want to spend hundreds of millions on a church. What's the church going to do for us? But it puts more into slavery. These are the issues we really need to confront and deal with now. There's a story about this European and African sitting on a plane, and the European was taunting the African, saying that your people are not going to go far because your mind still enslaved. And the African said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Okay, wait till we get off the airport." So when they got to the airport now, the European guy, the customer said, "Yeah, walk on," and he moved on. And when the black guy went there, "Stop! You stop! Open your bag." So the European was just told to march through because it could be the European could have done anything. He can't have drugs in his bag because he looks like Jesus. But the African, they stopped him, opened his bag, started going through all the stuff there. And the white guys looked around, and the white looked to the African and said, "I told you, we've got some issues here we need to deal with. And if we don't deal with them, they're going to be going on and on and on. They're uncomfortable, but we have to deal with them now." And the thing is, when we know our history, we know that we started this concept in the first place. Because during the 25th dynasty, for example, the 18th dynasty of Egypt, where we had a world empire, we used to, when we invaded a country, we'd bring the prince home with us. Partly as a hostage, partly, but they was educated within the royal temples, within the palace. So if the king died of the lands they were ruling, or they got rid of him, they sent the prince there, and the prince was indoctrinated to view the world through African eyes, and they just did their bidding. And this is thousands of years ago, and that same system, what we created, is being used against us, but because we don't know our history, we're not sure how to deal with it. So these are the things that we really need to deal with. Anyway, this is Brother Jenna. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. And let me, if I can find my tune here. Have a great week. Yeah, I'm going to catch you next week again. We'll have a new book. We start reading a new book next week, okay? So you take care. Have a great week. And I'll speak to you next week. Wake up, people. Wake up.